In 1921, Brigadier General Billy Mitchell was right about the Pearl Harbor risk, and the Navy court-martialed him for it. The Navy gave him 24 hours to prove that battleships could be destroyed from the air. In only 21 minutes and 30 seconds, he sent the Ostro-Friesland to the bottom of the Atlantic. That's happened to you, not the full court-martial with the fancy uniforms and the "you're a disgrace to the epaulets" speech. But you walk in with cold hard evidence, you present it like a normal human being, and the institution looks at you like you've just taken a big leak in the punch bowl. To them, the problem isn't that big iceberg right in front of them. It's you pointing out that the iceberg is right there. Institutions don't evaluate things that threaten their framework. They eliminate them. In 1925, the US Navy eliminated Brigadier General Mitchell. And on the 7th of December, 1941, the Japanese military exploited that. 21st of July, 1921, 60 miles off the Virginia coast. Brigadier General Billy Mitchell had one captured German warship, a squadron of bombers, and 24 hours to prove that battleships were no match for modern aircraft. The Navy's official position was that aircraft could not sink a battleship. Battleships were the Navy's strategic doctrine. Its budget justification, its officer class. The entire institutional architecture pointed to the battleship as the answer. Mitchell's bombers obliterated the Ostro-Friesland in 21 minutes and 30 seconds and sent it to the bottom of the ocean floor. The Navy's response was immediate. The demonstration had been conducted under unrealistic conditions. The results were not operationally valid. Mitchell had proven nothing, even though they'd watched live with their own eyes from the observation deck. The court-martial didn't stop Mitchell. Lives were at stake. In the early 1920s, he published the details. He testified before Congress. He gave interviews. He named the vulnerability specifically. Japanese air power could destroy American battleships sitting in harbor. He named the location, Pearl Harbor. He named the method, aerial bombardment at dawn. He named the outcome, catastrophic loss of the Pacific Fleet. But the Navy had had enough. In 1925, Mitchell was court-martialed for insubordination and conduct prejudicial to good conduct and military discipline. The Navy didn't court-martial him for being wrong. They court-martialed him for the unforgivable crime of being right in public repeatedly. Like some aviation-based psychopath who wouldn't shut up about these giant floating targets sitting on open water. The panel that convicted him included the then Brigadier General Douglas MacArthur. Yes, MacArthur helped bury the guy, and then spent World War II proving the buried guy was right. That's what institutional comedy looks like. The punchline costs 2,403 lives. Mitchell was stripped of rank and forced to resign, but he continued and spent the last decade of his life writing, speaking, and warning that air superiority would determine the outcome of every future war. Whoever controls the air controls the battlefield. If you lose the air, you lose everything underneath it. The institution that removed him wouldn't accept this doctrine until 1947. 11 years after his death, 6 years after Pearl Harbor proved it. And every major military operation since has been planned around the principle that the Army-Navy court-martial refused to accept. On December 7, 1941, 5 years and 10 months after Mitchell died, Japan launched 553 aircraft against Pearl Harbor at dawn, exactly as Mitchell had urged the Navy to prepare for. 8 battleships sunk or destroyed, 188 planes destroyed on the ground, 1,187 wounded, 2,403 Americans killed in 2 hours. President Franklin D. Roosevelt called it a day that will live in infamy, an infamy that could have been avoided. Mitchell had described it in detail, in public, 20 years earlier. He named the attacker. He named the method. He named the location. He named the outcome. The institution court-martialed him for it. Then, 2 decades later, was surprised by the event Mitchell had predicted, surrounded by the dead it produced. This is not the Pearl Harbor story that gets told, but it is the real story of the Day of Infamy. Here's the Navy's thinking from the inside. The battleship was more than a weapons platform. It was the budget. It was the career structure. It was the identity of the institution. Every officer in that room had built their professional life on the belief that the battleship was the answer. Mitchell's evidence did more than threaten a theory. It threatened a well-entrenched way of life. So the institution did what institutions do. It processed the information as a threat to the institution rather than a warning of what was coming. Procedural grounds were used to dismiss the demonstration. Legal basis was used to remove the person who identified the real risk. The institution produced a clean institutional outcome and called it professional judgment. This isn't stupidity, and it isn't even the usual upper-class arrogance that makes them think their brass buttons makes them more clever. No, the Navy's immune system kicked in immediately. Evidence that threatened the sacred battleship doctrine? Rejected faster than a mistress showing up to a bishop's conference. Thank you, but we're married to our current strategy. Douglas MacArthur commanded Allied forces in the Pacific from 1942 to 1945. He fought the war that Billy Mitchell had already mapped. He commanded the theatre that Billy Mitchell had specifically named. The man who ruled Mitchell was insubordinate spent 4 years proving him right. The institution didn't intentionally produce that irony. It's designed to avoid it. That's the point. Here's what AI inside the Navy's mindset in 1925 would have produced. The question on the table was not, is Mitchell right? The question was, do Mitchell's claims conform to established military doctrine? That was the mindset. That was the question the institution was capable of asking. AI answers the question it's asked. AI inside a broken room wouldn't have said, "Oi, bozos, Mitchell's right." It would have said, "Mitchell's claims do not conform to doctrine," with 99.9% confidence. Every citation perfect, every conclusion deadly. That's the danger. AI is like the world's most obedient yes man, except it speaks in complete sentences and is smarter than everyone in the room. Meanwhile, the actual smart guy gets removed for raising his hand, and every conclusion opens the door for another Pearl Harbor. This is what AI does inside a broken mindset. It doesn't correct the question. It accelerates the answer the institution was already producing. The confidence problem? AI delivers authoritative output regardless of the uncertainty underneath it. In a room where the authority wanted to proceed, confident AI output supporting the institution is more dangerous than the wisdom of human objection. Mitchell was the human voice the institution couldn't silence any other way, so it removed him. Chapter 5. Expecting the world to treat you fairly because you're a good person is like expecting the bull not to charge you because you're a vegetarian. Being right doesn't protect you. But I'm on their side. Doesn't matter. The bull's got horns and the institution's got lawyers and procedures. And neither of them gives a damn about your feelings or your evidence. Mitchell was right in 1921. He was right in 1925. He was right when he died. And the Navy only changed their mind when the Japanese turned their prized battleships into very expensive ashtrays. That's not a policy review. That's natural selection with extra steps at the expense of 2,403 lives. That, unfortunately, is the institution operating as it's designed. What changed is not the institution. What changed is the questions being asked by the people running the analysis. This same AI that would have confirmed Marshall's insubordination in 1925 is now in your hands. Not just the Navy's, not just the institution's, yours. The analysis the Navy suppressed took a court-martial and 2 decades of marginalization to bury. Today, you can ask deeper questions and get the answer in minutes. The institution no longer controls the questions that get asked, and it no longer controls who sees the answer. That is the first time in the history of institutional power that the people who the institution was built to manage have access to the same analytical information as the institution itself. Mitchell had the evidence. The institution had the authority to bury it. That equation has changed. The institution's immune response isn't rare. Every organization that you've been part of has run this architecture. The question isn't whether this is happening in your organization right now. The question is whether you're Mitchell or whether you're the panel. Who in your organization is currently being managed, and what are they carrying? What in your institution are you asking AI to confirm? And what question is not being asked? And when was the last time you actually asked, is this right? Instead of the much safer institutional favorite, does this fit with what we already believe? And more importantly, will this get me promoted? Institutions will always protect whatever keeps the machine humming, right up to the point it blows up in their face. The Navy was wrong about Mitchell for 20 years. The Japanese proved it in 90 minutes, and it cost 2,403 lives. I'm at the edge of a hole where a town used to be. The State Electricity Commission built Yallourn in 1921. The same year, Mitchell put the Ostro-Friesland on the ocean floor. They built state-of-the-art houses, schools, a hospital, a theatre, a swimming pool. 60 years later, they demolished it to access the coal underneath, and retrospectively claimed it was always meant to be temporary. The institution that built Yallourn didn't protect the homes they made for their people. This happens in every organisation, every day. I'm Damian Andrews, and remember, the quality of thinking you bring to AI determines everything.